Okay, so let's start our interview. So,
Okay.
yeah, today I want to discuss with you 4 topics. The first one is about some skill set and background of product manager or entrepreneur. The second one is about some advisory work, how it works, what do advisory usually. For example, it's you because you work with a lot of startups and companies,
Okay. Okay.
have a lot of experience. The third one is about working on vision. What is the vision of a company? How we how we can work with the vision, yeah, with the company. Yeah, maybe some examples of company visions from your experience or something like this. Uh,
Okay.
and the last one is also interesting, and it's also interesting about your experience. It's about like international products versus local Indian products. So, what is difference? Do you feel some difference between this type of products and uh, yeah, and this thing? Yeah.
All right. Okay. Lot of questions.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll try to be
Good. Yeah.
good in that. Okay.
Let's try to do it. Yeah. Together. So the first one is about like skill set of entrepreneur or maybe product manager. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Is the main skills maybe of this kind of persons? In your opinion, what is like top 3 maybe?
Sure. So I think one of the greatest skill I'm sure you would have also heard about a product manager or an entrepreneur is actually to be a hustler.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you need to
wherein
move a lot.
yeah, you need to be agile, you need to be kind of moving very fast, and have your hands across all the other functions of the company. So I think yeah, hustler is very important.
Mhm.
If you are generally an introvert, you generally want to sit at your desk, just do your work and so on, then
Uh-huh.
both of those are not the right, I would say, occupation for you.
Yeah, so you need to to drive your team, to drive your
Yes,
guys in your company, yeah,
yes, that's
to
right.
push
Yeah.
some energy.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, on the serious notes, I think the second important skill is to be business aware.
Hmm.
That's kind of very important for both entrepreneur as well as product manager.
Uh-huh.
So that ways you can take a outside inside approach,
Mm.
wherein you understand the market, you understand the business, you understand the users. You can work collaboratively with the sales teams and marketing teams
Uh-huh.
to get that product in the hand of the customers. So I think it's very important to have as a skill, awareness in overall business, so that you can work very effectively with all of these teams together, and kind of create that impact. End of the day, you are creating something for somebody,
Hmm.
and that is closely associated with kind of how and what business you can do with them, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think the third one is, we briefly spoke about last time as well, is the whole skill of collaboration. So I'm kind of talking first
Uh-huh.
on the soft skills, and I think the third one is collaboration. How do you really collaborate with different teams in different
Hmm.
ways in different culture, right? So for example, the culture in engineering team could be very different than the culture in sales team, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The culture in customer success team can be very different in than the culture in marketing teams.
Uh-huh.
So how do you collaborate with different cultures within the company? I'm sure company has one culture, but
Hmm.
obviously when you have different teams working, they have their own ways of working, they have their different thoughts, and it may not be similar to other team as well, right? So it's very
Yeah.
important, how do you collaborate, and how do you make sure that the outcomes are fast, simple, and nimble, important
Mhm.
for a product manager as well as entrepreneur, right?
So you need to use different tricks with different teams here, yeah, like this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's the hidden part of it. So you need to understand those tricks very well to make sure that you get the right outcomes, right inputs, and right support and collaboration, right?
Nice. So maybe can you share with our community some tricks that you use, for example, with dev team or marketing or sales? I don't know what is. Mind.
Yes, maybe I'll share a few. Now, I'm an engineer by heart, and I can still do technical architectures,
Mhm.
get right engineering components, and influence engineering as well. So I've been programmer myself earlier as well. But moving forward, I have been into business and product roles. So what do I do is with the engineering teams, I never try to uh, uh, kind of be very aggressive with the engineering teams with my own
Uh-huh.
personal opinions, right? I try to put a boundary wherein I don't influence them with my own engineering principles and decisions. And
Mhm.
I bring in trust with the engineering teams.
So like
Uh,
you're professionals, it's your deal. Yeah. Hmm.
yes, so sort of, you are the best minds we have in the
Uh-huh.
company. Those problems. I'll bring in all the business problems, bring in all the other parts of it on top of it, and kind of try to create a great product along with you. And then when I see when the engineering decisions are not going the way it should be ideally, and that sometimes could happen, and that's where then I think I
Uh-huh.
come in with alternate solutions as opposed to again going aggressively. Hey, say, this is not the way you should do it. This is the way you should do it, as opposed to, and so I don't go that way. And I say, hey, can we do and use some alternate tactics, solutions
Uh-huh.
with their own benefits and disadvantages? And I think then we collectively take a kind of a
Mm.
suitable approach to solve that problem, right? So that has always worked. So that ways you don't really get into those tricky situations wherein you don't get the right support from the engineering teams, right? So that's one part. When
Uh-huh.
I work with sales team, I've been doing sales when I was an entrepreneur and the CEO of a different company. I'd been leading a lot of sales guys and I'd done sales on my own. But when I deal with sales guys, I kind of try to get into their shoes and speak their language,
Hmm.
and as opposed to what they should go and sell per se, but it's kind of getting into their shoes, understanding their pain points, talking in their own language, the way they talk typically with the customers and
Uh-huh.
internally.
Yeah.
That has always worked for me. So those are a few tricks. I think it's important to be in the shoes of those people without really taking that soul into you so much
Hmm.
that you try to cross and overlap their functions and their decisions, right? So you have to be kind of careful in how do you influence, but at the same point of time, you use some of these tricks to kind of get the right support and
Uh-huh.
collaboration.
Cool. So thank you for sharing these tricks with our community. I think it's really important to feel that, yeah, over the words, these things is really important. Working with the team, yeah,
Yes.
working with sales and dev team. So as we said about your like developers background and technical background, I should ask your question about other guys who doesn't have some engineering experience, and
Yes.
they have some fear working with development team because they can't control this team, they do not know how it works, and they do not know how to work with engineering team. So can you share maybe some yeah, how to better work with engineer team when you are not engineer, uh, and
Yes.
uh, is it okay to be entrepreneur without engineering skills? Yeah, it's also interesting.
Um, yes. So I think as a first, I'll take maybe as a product manager scenario, right? So I think as a
Yeah.
product manager, it's not very necessary to have an engineering background. It's good to have. if you are in the space of software driven products and so
Mm-hmm.
on, or even hardware driven products, right? So it helps always, but it's not very necessary. End of the day, as I said, I think as a product manager, if you're able to articulate your product vision, your product spec, and your product features and
Uh-huh.
outcomes
Yeah.
to the engineering teams, and be aware of the technology trends. Obviously, because it's a technology product, you have to be aware of what's going on
Mm-hmm.
in technology, right? So I think as long as you can handle those scenarios and leave the engineering part to the engineering teams, it typically works out well. End of the day, you have to make sure the engineering teams are deliver as per your SLAs, in terms of user experience SLA, in terms of performance SLA, in terms of
Uh-huh.
security SLAs. So if you have right metrics defined for your product, right from start to end, and then you're collaboratively working with engineering team to make sure that those SLAs are met, those outcomes are met. I think it is no roadblock for you to work
Mm-hmm.
effectively with the engineering teams, right? So as a product manager, you need to have those skills wherein you can articulate your vision, your features, your specs, your product, your experience, and then have a defined metrics and outcomes associated to it. And then you kind of track it on every scrum,
Uh-huh.
every time you meet them, on every releases. I think it's not a roadblock at all, and you should be able to come out
Mm-hmm.
with a great product, right?
Yeah.
And that has worked for a lot of product managers that way. So people who come from MBS backgrounds, who bring in a lot of business kind of sensitivity to it, and who guys can work in this kind of a model, they have been very successful in the past, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and on the entrepreneur side, um I think it's not very essential to be an engineer to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people who have come from sales background, marketing background, and so on, even finance background, right?
Uh-huh.
They've started great companies, they've built great companies. As long as you have good team around you in terms of your co-founders, in terms of your other teams, product engineering teams, and so
So
on.
it's more about hiring for entrepreneur, I think.
Yes, yes, I think it's all about team, and at the same point of time, also having a co-founder along with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As long as you can have a very good co-founder who is technical, engineering, product background, and then you have a right team behind it. I think it has always worked for such founders who are not from engineering background per se. So I think it's absolutely not necessary,
Uh-huh.
as long as you have a great co-founders
Yeah,
and you have a
because
great team.
you have another focus, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. In
you
fact,
have to
I've
focus
seen,
outside of company, I think.
yes, in fact, I've seen many times it has worked very well. Somebody who don't come from engineering background, but kind of do great sales and marketing or a great business, and then you have a kind of a good technical co-founder. I think that combination has worked very well for a lot of companies.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's move to our second topic. Our second topic is about advisory. So can you share, as advisor of a lot of teams, with us some like usual day of advisor, or how it working usually? Yeah, how do you work with company? Is it some difference maybe in working with different companies? Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think as an advisor, it's kind of sometimes you're taking an inside outside approach, and sometimes you're taking outside inside approach.
Uh-huh.
So day could vary. One day you could be taking an inside outside approach, and maybe another you're taking outside inside approach. And I'll mention what do I mean by that, right? So inside outside approach is whether you have right team in place, whether you have right mindset, whether you have
Mhm.
right culture, whether you have right teams, right
Uh-huh. Yeah.
experiences to build a product for a large market, right? So are you geared up that way? That's an inside outside approach, right? So do you
Mhm.
have skills to do it? In terms of your team, see, do you have a right team who could do a right marketing, who could do a right SEO, could do a right growth, could do a right campaign
Uh-huh.
outreach, right? So that's sort of an inside approach. So I think I spend sometimes with the founders to kind of find out whether their internal circle is good within the
Mhm.
company. which can help them to make great product. And then obviously also do a lot of brainstorming internally, find out what are the product gaps, what is the experience which is lacking, and all those things, right? So that's sort of inside or outside approach. Then the second is outside inside approach, wherein I spend a lot of time with them, understanding whether they've understood what market they are in, whether they've understood what is the competition going on, whether they've understood the competition not only in the local market but also in the global market, whether they've understood what are the financing trends going on in that market in terms of venture capital investments, right? Do they understood which companies are growing in that segment, which specific features are getting more traction from the competitive scenario standpoint as well. And then you kind of, and what is the customer behavior, what sort of demands are coming from customers, users, and so on, right? And that's what you then try to bring in, and combine with the inside outside approach, right? So you combine this all this outside, I would say, things coming out, and you combine with all your
So you
internal team
feel,
skills.
well, what is need for company right now? Do you need to go
Yes.
inside company, or you should help to move outside to be?
Yes, so kind of both of them. Yeah, so sometimes you spend the internal part of it, and then sometimes you spend on the outside part of it, and then you try to combine those together to come out with the right product market fit, to come out with the right growth strategy, to come out with the right competitive strategy, to come out with a great user experience, and to come out with something what investors would love as well to invest. Right?
Cool, interestingly, yeah. And what is somehow like a scheduler of your meetings with the company? Is it like weekly meetings or like quarterly directors board, or yeah? Well, what's
Yes.
your what meeting do you have with the
So
company?
it's typically on a monthly basis, which is more formal. But thanks to all digital channels like WhatsApp and so on, we keep on communicating anyways, right? So, but formally, it's largely on a monthly basis. And for certain companies which are slightly more, slightly better scaled up, we do quarterly basis. So that's the formal part. But informally, I think thanks to all these communication channels, it keeps on happening every day.
Yeah, I think so. Interestingly, yeah, and well, what also interesting? What is like maybe top three some mistakes maybe that you usually see with companies with
Yeah.
you help us as advisor? I think you're going to a company and said, okay, I understand. Here is the problem, guys.
Yes, I think I've generally seen in many scenarios, and I think which is a global phenomenon, is people start solving a problem and building a product with a very small set of thoughts and inputs. What do I mean by that is that problem statement may not be very big enough to solve, right? Which could essentially hamper your scale and growth at a latter stage. I've seen a lot of times founders and startups thinking on their mind or from their mind that this is the right problem to solve. Because I'm experiencing this problem, so I'm sure everybody else on the planet is experiencing this problem, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen people building products on that thought, and then spending couple of years, and then figuring out that maybe a small set of people are wanting to use it, but large other set of people are not wanting to use it for different reasons. So I think that's one very common problem I come across. Second, even though people get into a right solution for a right problem, people don't think about how big that market is. I think it's very essential to see whether the markets are big enough to solve that problem. It could be a very small market of 1 million people, and then you may not build a large business from 1 million people, right? But if it's a market for few hundreds of millions of people, so then it essentially becomes a large business to grow as well, right? Third, I've seen generally people want to scale at a very early stage, which should be avoided.
Mhm.
unless you have got the right product market fit,
So they make a
unless,
big team and
yeah,
something like this. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think it's very essential to be nimble unless you're really on a
Mhm.
fast growth stage, right? So unless you see a very right and very strong product market fit, unless you see
Uh-huh.
a strong viral growth, unless you see strong funding interest from a lot of investors,
Mhm.
unless you see good tick up on your incoming revenues and so on. So you should be very nimble, avoid scaling very fast.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I think last thing is actually which many people miss is on the user experience.
Mm.
People think that, hey, let's build something right now and we'll figure out experience later, right?
Uh-huh.
And I still see that,
Mm.
unfortunately. People still don't give experience the first advantage,
Uh-huh.
and they tend to ignore it. I
So
think
it's
it's very
like
essential.
quality of a product. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
absolutely,
mm-hmm.
absolutely. So I think focusing on experience right from day one, on your product experience, on your marketing experience, on your
Uh-huh.
customer experience, I think all of that as an experience needs to come and be put up in your company right from day one. So,
Yeah, thanks. And also, it's interestingly about some maybe internal mistakes, which kind of mistakes you usually sometimes see into company, into a team. Can you share maybe some? It's also very
um, so yeah, I think those are related. So within the teams, I've seen that you know so typically I've seen that people may not have right team in place first of all.
mm-hmm.
Somebody think that because I've started a company, I'm the one who can do everything and I'm the one who can do it best.
Uh-huh.
I'm the smartest one to do it, right? So I've
Mm-hmm.
seen because of that internally there is a lot of friction between the teams, wherein you get somebody onboarded and then you don't trust that particular person for their
Uh-huh.
experience, right? And because you're a founder, you think you are the smartest, and I think that never works. People who have been able to hire smarter people and
Mm-hmm.
then delegate to them to the best of their experience, I think that's one of the problem I've seen.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, people not thinking in terms of what's the right product scale or product strategy should be in. I mean, I've seen people who say that, hey, let's do it for first million customers and then we'll figure out how the product should be built for next 10 in next 100
Uh-huh.
million, right? So I've seen within the teams this sort of gap wherein the
Mm.
product team does not build uh, products right from the beginning for scale.
Uh-huh.
There is a lot of technical debt which comes up later, and that kind of fires back at you at every stage later on, right?
Mm.
Thirdly, I've seen people not communicating well with outsiders, and I think it's very essential
Uh,
for founders and even for the founding team to go out of the company, meet people in different events, get
mhm.
their perspective, get the learnings, get the gaps. So I've seen
So,
those
so
kind of
they
gaps as
work a
well.
lot inside the team, like founders, and
Yeah,
do not work
yeah.
outside of the team. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm, I
yes,
see.
that's right, right. So those are few of the things which I've typically seen internally. Yeah, and then
Uh-huh.
obviously not having the right hiring strategy. So if you don't have a right hiring strategy, I've seen people, somebody who's good in marketing is been also created as a product manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it may not necessarily that person may not have the right product management skill. So
Uh-huh.
I've seen that sort of a transition wherein you don't have right hires and you try to do or you try to give all roles to somebody who may not be able to do it just to save cost and so on, which is fair sometimes. But then again, you don't get best of the outcomes in such scenarios.
Mm.
So you need to get right people with the right experience
Uh-huh.
uh, to kind of do those things when you're kind of post beyond your ideation stage or post beyond your MVP stage.
Cool. Yes. Thank you for sharing about this. It's important, I think, to work with a team, especially. Yeah,
Correct.
and get
Correct.
some experience of a lot of guys how they work with their teams and what
Yeah.
experience do they have. in this
Absolutely.
process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's discuss our third part about vision. So yeah, what do you think about a vision? Is it important for a team or not? And how do you usually work with a vision, or how do you usually suggest maybe for teams to do some process working with a vision?
Yeah. So I think on the vision side, I typically, and this is my personal opinion, I have seen that in a lot of other vision statements as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the vision statement needs to have an impact, or
Uh-huh.
it needs to be driven by an impact. And what do I mean by that is, what's the impact on external world,
Some
outside your.
changes in work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right. So for example, Facebook vision when they started was not to create great social network, right?
Uh-huh.
However,
Yeah.
the vision was to connect friends and
So
families, right?
connects. Yeah.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
right. They didn't say that we want to be a number one social network company of
Yeah,
the
and
world,
and
right?
we
So
and we and we got these changes.
exactly. For example, then Salesforce vision was not to be number one CRM company of the world per se,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they wanted to make sales process easier. They want
Uh-huh.
to increase the productivity of salespeople on the field, and so on, right? So I think the
Mm-hmm.
vision statements needs to be driven by what impact you want to have on people, on customers, and generally in that
Mm-hmm.
sense across the world. And if you have that larger vision, so then, because then that, if you're talking about impact, then the impact could be very large or could be very huge
Uh-huh.
when you take the whole world in one segment, right? So and if that's a large vision, then automatically a lot of things gets boiled down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard, and I think Steve Jobs has also said this, that you don't pull your vision, but vision pulls you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so if you
Nice.
have
Yeah.
a large and a strong vision with a strong impact, and I think that will pull a lot of things in your
Mm-hmm.
execution strategies and your execution, what you do to build that towards vision. So
So it also helps you to answer some questions, maybe, yeah, to do some prioritize between your
yes.
different strategies. Yep.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, because then your products are also built that ways, right? So your products are built to create that impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your teams are built to create that impact. Your execution strategy is built to create that impact. So I think a lot of things get turned around just because of that very strong right vision of a company or a founder. So.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and what is what is the steps that usually a team or a founder can do to make like right strategy and maybe right process to working with the strategy? Yeah, because I think it's not only about like short idea about your vision. Uh, it's a bigger thing. Yeah, it's some process
Ye-
maybe.
Yes, I think from a strategy perspective, it's very essential to do into three departments, which I say typically is why, what, and how, right?
Uh-huh.
So if you answer those three things very clearly and kind of articulated it very properly, your process becomes very simple and your
Mhm.
strategy can be executed very well, right? So why do you want to do this, right? Is it to kill a competition? Is it to get a step ahead of a competition? Is it
Uh-huh.
to change the behavior? Is it to impact the behavior? Is it to have a incremental impact on the behavior, and so on, right? So I think it's
Mhm.
all starts
Yeah.
with why. When you have nailed down why as part of your strategy, then you talk about what.
Mhm.
So what is, then what are you going to do it? What are you going to build around it?
Uh-huh.
What is going to be your team to do it? What is going to be your investment strategy, investments to do it, and so on, right? So that's where
Mhm.
all what
Yeah.
components comes in, and then the last part is how. So then how are you going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
and then you build components around how part of it. So if you can structure your thought process within why, what, and how,
Mm.
that's how you can build your strategy around it, and then you can execute across it. And it also becomes then very simpler to make anybody understand your strategy,
Uh-huh.
right? So as opposed to having a very colorful presentation of your strategy,
Yeah.
if you could divide into these three simple parts, it becomes easier for everybody.
Yeah, to
If
understand your what do you
exactly,
want to do, yeah, and
exactly.
why.
So even if you go and talk to a fresher, the person will understand what your strategy is, right? So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah, interestingly. And what about some maybe checking process of your strategy? So, for example, like 3 years ago, company choose some strategy,
yeah,
and maybe like one per year or maybe one per 2 years, company should check, is it what we're doing, is it in our strategy or not, is it in our vision or not, because I think in a lot of cases you make some like slogan, some good
yeah,
cool strategy, and you do not, and yeah, and you do not think about this, and you forget
correct.
about this, and you go straight another way, something like this.
Yeah. So see, I think in today's fast moving world, it's very essential to keep a check on your strategy on all these components very frequently.
Uh-huh.
That could be quarterly, that could be 6 monthly, or could be year.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I think strategies for smaller companies, for entrepreneurs, for startups,
Uh-huh.
have to be kind of both short term and long term, as opposed to just long term. You cannot have a 5 year strategy from now altogether,
Mm-hmm.
especially for startups, because then you are in a very fast changing world. You don't know what all competition will come up at what point of time. You don't know how markets will change. You don't know how consumer behavior will change. You don't know how investor strategy will change, and
Uh-huh.
so on, right?
Yeah.
So I think for startups, it's very important to have both short-term and long-term strategy, and then you have periodic checks on a short-term strategy. You do a maybe 2 months, 3 months kind of a
Mm-hmm.
check, and then for long-term strategy, you can always do kind of a 6 months check and
Uh-huh. Yeah.
see whether you are on the same path, right? So that's personally what I believe. You
Mm-hmm.
should have your checkpoints on your strategy.
Cool. And yeah, one more question about strategy and about some vision, because vision it's like some hard decision. It's affect everyone in a company. It's affects a lot of decisions that will be in a company. It can be sometimes hard to understand. Well, what is the like right vision? So maybe you
Uh-huh.
have like two different visions, maybe in a company or between founders. I don't know. And what is the best way, maybe, to check your vision? Is it right vision, or it isn't right vision, or it's about some feelings of a founder? Yeah, how to work with this better?
Yeah, so I think it's a very, very tricky question, right? So whether
Yeah, I think
uh,
so.
I think there are two parts: strategy and vision, right? So let's separate
Yeah.
them both of them differently and treat them
Hmm.
differently. So strategy, I think you can always, a strategy needs to have outcome at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right?
So
Uh,
strategy is more mathematical thing.
Yes, so I think you measure it constantly
Mhm.
on a periodic basis.
Uh-huh.
You figure out what you're doing, how you're doing as part of it. You kind of measure all of that, and
Hmm.
when you see that those measurements are not kind of getting met, you can always change your
Uh-huh.
strategy,
Yep.
right? So strategy is much more simpler to change based
Mhm.
on those progress and outcomes.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
understand about outcome and yeah, make decision
Exactly,
about
exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And for strategy, you can always get it kind of vetted by external people, advisors,
Uh-huh.
mentors, investors, and so on, right? So
Yep.
it's very easy to do that. I think the complexity comes in the vision part of it, right?
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I typically even advise companies that you can be slightly slower on stating your right vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is an ultimate final vision. I mean, you could take some baby steps in defining your vision, but you can hold on nailing it down as your final vision. So I think on the vision side, it's largely driven by founders and their experiences in the business. How is the market doing? How is the customer behaving? Are they on the right track on doing that? And then they can always refine the vision if needed. But that's actually very complex, and I think vision statements needs to be clear. You can be slow in defining it, but you cannot keep on changing every 6 months, right? Like strategy.
Yeah, because it's a vision.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where you could be slightly slow in defining your vision, and then as you kind of move forward and you get more clarity on your own ideas, you get more clarity on what impact is going to create on the end users and customers, you can start defining your vision, that way. So vision is slightly a complex part. Strategy is still simpler to kind of adopt change, get feedback, and so on. On vision, I think getting feedback also becomes very difficult. I mean, as an advisor or a mentor or an investor, I think vision needs to be primarily driven by founders, is what I believe,
Yeah,
based on
because
their
I think
learnings.
it's somehow some energy from founders about this idea.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. And what impact they want to create, right? So I think
yeah.
as long as they're very clear on that part, which we talked about in the vision section, right? So
Yeah.
as long as they're clear on what impact they want to create and what scale they want to create, they're the right ones to come out with that particular vision.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you for sharing about this, because it's really tricky things to
Yes,
to
that's right.
work with this. And as a fourth part, as a final our topic, I want to discuss with you about some international products versus some local products in Indian market. So can you share some difference, maybe between companies, between well, what is difference on working on this market, and what is some interesting things maybe on Indian as a local market also? Yeah, because a lot of our guys are working on the European market, and for them is India like some new market, and for them
Sure,
it's also
sure.
interesting. What's the difference maybe? Yeah, can be.
Yes. So if I take India as a specific example, India
Yeah.
versus rest of the world, right?
Um.
So in India, the demography is very different than the other markets. And when I say demography, in terms of people in different regions, languages in different regions, behavior of people in different regions, thought process of different people in different regions, is dramatically different than, or significantly different in India versus any other continent or the country, right? So if you see demography in Europe, largely you'll not see so much of difference. If you see demography of US, you'll not see a very wide difference. Obviously there are few, but they're not as huge as in countries like India, which makes it slightly complex to create and build a product for a market like India itself. Because then within India, you have different languages, different thoughts, different emotions, different cultures.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it takes time to adopt a product to that particular demography like India,
Yeah.
as opposed to, let's say,
So
like Europe or
maybe if,
US.
for example, if some company want to work in India market, is it better to maybe to choose one region of India, for example, and start only in one city or maybe on one region, or is it better to think about like whole India? Well, what is the better?
So yeah, uh, I think there is no very straight answer to it, to be really honest, right? Let me give an example of, let's say, Flipkart. Now, Flipkart is a one product for the whole India,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it works
Yeah.
very good because the category of that product is different. It's a commerce category, as an
Mm-hmm.
example, right?
Yep.
So if you are in a category like that, then you can think whole of India as one India, as
Mm-hmm.
your one demography, and create a product around it. If your category is something else, so let's say if your category is into content,
Uh-huh.
now the content category acceptance and behavior is very different in different regions of India.
Mm.
So then you might have to take up one specific section of India and then create your product around it, and then go to other sections, right? As an
Uh-huh.
example. So let me give you, let's say in a content category, there are different languages in India now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say Hindi is the most prevalent language in India across a lot of states,
Uh-huh.
right? So you can go with that first as your market, which
Mm-hmm.
covers, let's say, large part of India as well, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you can go to other sections of India which has different other languages and different other behavior. So
Mm.
I would say your strategy on getting in India depends upon what category of product you are
Uh-huh.
building,
Is
right?
it more
And
about content or is it like a category for all of people? Yeah.
yes, that's right. So
Uh-huh.
once you are clear what's your category, and then accordingly you can define your strategy, whether you want to go whole India at once, or
Mm-hmm.
you want to go, a few sections of India first and then go to other
Yeah,
sections of
yeah,
India.
I see. And is it some difference in marketing activities or in marketing things, or is it similar?
So no, I think marketing is fairly similar.
Uh-huh.
Now obviously there is both online, offline marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Online marketing is very much similar, except you have to just
Yeah,
adopt to
like you're
look.
working with Facebook, for example. Yeah.
Yes, so I think that's pretty much
Um.
is unified, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do offline marketing,
Yeah.
then you have to
Mm-hmm.
be slightly more creative,
Um.
because then some of the, let's say you're creating a television commercial. A
Yes, it's
television
some local
commercial,
thing, some local behavior, maybe.
yes,
Yep.
yes,
Uh,
exactly. So then, unless you're a very good agency who could create one single campaign for the whole country,
mm.
it may work out. But then
Uh-huh.
sometimes you have to adopt your commercials to a specific section of India.
Mm-hmm.
So I think offline is a place wherein, uh, uh, not one can fit the whole bill.
Uh-huh.
But online is kind of unified, so that's not a problem. So.
Yeah, I see. Okay, and let's see on India and versus international market. What is difference on your opinion? What is maybe some problems with Indian companies to go international, or what is best way to do this? Or yeah, maybe yeah.
So for Indian companies to go global, I think it's also a set of investments required, right?
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Most of the times, companies don't have right set of investments to go global,
Uh-huh.
because when you have to go global, you have to have right teams in place in that specific region,
Yeah.
and then you need to have right set of investments to invest. You cannot be short-term thinking to go global, right? You need to
Mm-hmm.
have a long-term thinking strategy, and to back it up, you need to have right set of investments. So I've seen that sort of one of the problems.
Uh-huh.
Second, I've seen people who don't come from global experience background. They don't know how those markets behave. They don't know what are
Yeah.
the customer consumer ask in those countries. So you may lack all those inputs to create a great product for international markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Third, you don't get right set of teams to expand in those markets. You don't select your regions as well properly.
Yeah.
You may go to Europe, but then you may figure out that Europe is not the right market. So
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
In US, for example, or Russia, for example. So I think you need to be very. I've seen those problems where people struggle in getting their global
Mm-hmm.
strategy right.
So you
Uh,
should have some knowledge about other markets. Yeah. Some experience
Yes,
working on
ex-
them.
correct,
Yeah.
and sometimes people don't test waters first
Um.
in that market without going aggressively in that market. So those are certain challenges for younger companies. For matured companies, those are not the problems per se. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of matured businesses in India have gone global and they've been successful with the right strategies and
Hmm.
right investments.
Interesting,
Right?
yeah. And for example, about big Indian companies that are starting to move outside of India, do they move into Asia or to Europe or USA, like a first step? Or
It's for matured companies or for bigger companies, right?
yeah.
Uh, so for bigger companies, I think they're very driven by the market,
Mm-hmm.
whether there is a right market size and market opportunity,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to any favored selection of any specific region or country.
Mm-hmm.
So they have good teams in place, they have good research teams, they have good partners
Uh-huh.
who kind of advise them, and they have right partners as well to advise them which is the right market for them. And based
Mm-hmm.
on that, they go. So it's not necessarily they may end up going in Asia first versus going in Europe first, right? So
Yeah. So it
if
depends on some market research, like with your
yes,
big
yeah,
team and some advisors.
what's the size of the market, what's the behavior, what's the
Uh-huh.
change in the product required. So I think it's largely driven by that sort of research, and so that the success outcomes is much more higher.
Mm-hmm.
So and then that could be US, Russia, Europe,
Yeah, it
Asia, could be
depends on
anything.
market, but depends on some opportunities they
Correct, correct.
yeah. And well, what about some small companies? So, for example, guys have some small startup in India, and then they decide, okay, we should go outside India. Do they do some similar way, or they usually choose some country? I don't know. Yeah, what is?
So I think for younger companies, startups, I've seen US has been one of the most preferred
Mm.
market, right, after India.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and because they know US consumer behavior, they know it's an whole region is like, let's say, an English speaking region.
Yeah, this is the same
Uh,
language, a big market. Yep.
Correct, correct,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So US becomes most preferred market for India, for startups in India.
Yeah.
Sometimes even US becomes the first market even before the Indian market. So for example, a lot of enterprise SaaS companies, they go US first, versus India first, even if the company is founded in India.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then after US, they typically choose Europe,
Uh-huh.
and then Asia, right? So primarily because both Europe and Asia, in the sense, other than the culture, but I think the demographics change, the languages are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These
Uh-huh.
are smaller countries in Asia, as an example,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Europe, and it requires a lot of different changes in terms of
Yeah,
that
and
specific
another
user,
language. Yeah, and some
different behavior, yeah,
yeah,
different
interesting.
patterns.
Yeah, I understand. So it's about US market more. So to
Correct. Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Quite interesting. Yeah. We have discussed our main four topics. Thank you a lot for this. It's a lot of good sharings, a lot of nice ideas from you. And
Thank you.
yeah, right now we have like two more steps in our traditional interview.
Okay.
So yeah, so the first one, I usually ask our guys who's on our interview to suggest like three other people who they know with whom we can take some interview or take some
Okay.
sharing. Yeah, can
Okay.
you suggest some three persons for us? Yeah.
Yes, I will send you those details
Okay.
shortly after this call.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. and
Okay.
like second part, we usually do some short video with greetings from our interviewing to our community, like, hello guys, nice to meet you. I'm and yeah, and I can do you some suggestions maybe, or some, yeah, something. Okay, have a good day. Do nice products. Be cool
Okay.
and be a good hustler. Something like this. Yeah, let's
All
try to
right.
do this.
Okay. All right. Let's try that. Hello, guys. This is Akash. First of all, thanks to Mitchell for this great ProductStar global community for product managers. It's awesome to be here, especially talking to Mitchell. And I wish you all the best. Create global products, great products what people want, with great experiences and great success to the companies you're working in. So all the best, and I look forward to be part of this community and help and also learn at the same point of time from many other global product managers. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Cool. Yeah, nice speech. Thank you a lot. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. And one more thank you for your time. It was really interesting for me personally and for other guys. Like a next step, we with our video team will make like video from
Okay.
this, and I will share it with you so you can see it and may
Sure.
suggest some remarks if you want something like this. Yeah, so we'll take, I think it take like 1 week to make
Okay.
all of these video things and things with some graphics and other, and then I will share you and will get your feedback, and after that I will share on our community and also send you some feedback from our managers and so on. I think it will be
Nice.
really important for these guys to know about, yeah, how do other guys from different countries do some international products and working and in your case advisoring with other companies. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Mitchell, so much. It was nice talking to you as well. I look
Yeah.
forward to be in touch with you. I joined your WhatsApp group
Yep.
also. And feel free, let me know. Happy to help in the whole community expansion across the world.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and also I think in winter I will go to India
Okay,
for some weeks. So I think maybe
nice.
we can, yeah, see each other
Absolutely.
in real life. So it will be also cool. Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely. You need to tell me when you're coming, and
Okay.
we should definitely meet up then. I
Cool.
look forward.
Nice. Have a good day. I will go to my family for a family
Yes,
day. Yeah.
absolutely. Say hello to all of them, and you
Okay.
have a nice day.
Sure. Yeah. Bye
All right.
bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.